Jazzcast Pros.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Getting Real with Bossy. I'm Kelly Bush.
I'm Kelly Metris.
And we're excited to have you here today. It's just an episode with the two of us, and I have surprised Kelly with not telling her what we're going to talk about.
Yay!
It's something that we talk about a lot, and I wanted to do it this way because you'll understand. We kind of came to this podcast organically with always kind of this thought. We kind of bossy organically with this thought in the back of our head about how to do things and be raw and be authentic and be honest, because we felt that was super important because it was something that people weren't doing. And we were constantly going to events or seeing things on social media about business ownership. And it was always beautiful, but not always completely honest. So when we were sitting down to do the podcast, how should we do our little intro? And similar moments, as is everything in our lives, we were like, we need to do it like the real world, because everything about us is the real world.
Including the roommates.
Right. So I wrote a little intro and then we'll get into it. So when MTV's The Real World first aired, it was revolutionary in its approach to reality television. The iconic opening line.
This is the true story.
True story.
7 strangers.
Oh, I have it memorized.
To live in a loft.
And have their lives taped.
To find out what happens.
What? When people stop being polite. Could you get the phone?
And start getting real.
The real world.
That's season 1. That's the very first one. And even the intro with like the little parts put in, like that's so our lives and that's so us in our podcast, because oftentimes there's a dog barking or a kid needing something. So yes, the opening lines resonated with viewers because it promised a glimpse into the raw, unfiltered lives of its participants. It wasn't about the polished version of reality that most TV shows presented. It was about showing the authentic experiences of actual, real people. The spirit of authenticity is exactly what drives our podcast. Just like The Real World, where they stripped away the facade to reveal the true nature of relationships in life, we aim to peel back the layers of small business ownership. In an era where social media often presents a glossy, curated version of success, our podcast is dedicated to sharing the true story, the good, the bad, the happy, and the sad. Kelly and I have a combined experience of over 25 years and 9 businesses. We've seen it all. We know firsthand that owning a business can be a lonely and intimidating journey. It's easy to get caught up in the must-be-nices, but the reality is often more complex. That's why we're committed to telling it like it is. We don't shy away from tough conversations. Instead, we dive into them head first, sharing what we wish we had known when we started. Through candid interviews with other business owners, we uncover true stories behind the success and the struggle. Our goal is to create a space where business owners can feel seen, heard, and understood, because that last part is what's most important. We want our listeners to know they're not alone in their challenges, fears, or triumphs. Owning a business isn't always the glamorous dream it's made out to be. It's hard work, sacrifice, and sometimes absolutely terrifying. But it's also rewarding, fulfilling, and empowering. By sharing these stories, we hope to provide not just insight, but also a sense of community and support for women and people who are on this journey. So just like The Real World showed us what happens when real people stop being polite and start getting real, Getting Real with Bossy is here to show what happens when business owners stop hiding behind the highlight reel and start sharing their true stories, because in the end, it's those moments that matter the most.
You got me all teary-eyed.
I know, I'm teary-eyed, but that's also because I just did a Hot Ones challenge.
When did you write that?
In DC.
Oh my God, I love it.
Because that's where we were talking about it, and at one of the seminars that didn't necessarily pertain to us, I was like, I'm going to write like I'm writing notes and write our intro to this episode.
I love it.
So I just think it's funny because I think it was always in the back of our head that we really modeled Bossy around that idea. And then when we were sitting, I remember being in Asa's kitchen and being like, yeah, do it like The Real World. And we couldn't figure out like what the actual intro was. So
yep. And I still remember that show coming out and how it changed everything.
Right. And it wasn't the first reality show, but it was the first one I feel like that played towards our generation. It was completely different. And I remember being like, I want to be on that show. I want to do that because these people are real. And that's how life is. It's not, Beverly Hills 90210 or my so-called life that I was raised on.
Well, and I don't know if I've talked about it on here or with you, but I've thought a lot recently about how we're the first generation that isn't in like a major war. And that's not saying that we're not at war. I know that there's servicemen and women all over the country, and there's the Iraq war and the Afghanistan and all the wars that are going on, but they're much smaller effect societal. So, you know, you have the Vietnam War, you have World War II, you have World War I. So those were like massive societal affecting things, and entire generations of people were raised not allowed to talk. You didn't share your feelings. You didn't share what was going on. A lot of people came home from those big wars clamming everything up, whereas our generation didn't have that so much. So it's a much smaller portion that's experiencing that. And I always wonder like how much the 90s really kind of fall into that, because that's really when like our generation was coming out, right? But that's where you start to see these things. You start to see the movies. You start to see the cultural impact of like, we're all really fucked up. Mm-hmm. And we want to talk about it. We want to know who else is fucked up. We don't want to feel alone anymore. Like, and I feel like that really, and like the real world was like, oh, you get to actually see what these people are really like.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's funny that you just used those words, because I think back to Polly Guglielmo, who was like, oh, when he started hearing our podcast, you actually get to say that. And we're like, yes, absolutely. So why are we getting so comfortable with sharing our own lives, whether it's with our friends, our family, or social media, and not about business? And it needs to be talked about, because it is one of the loneliest things. And I've had lonely moments, like, don't get me wrong, but business ownership with my life partner is incredibly lonely and isolating, whether it's just the two of us or on our own. So I feel like it's just so important to have these conversations. So I think that one thing that's unique about us and our podcast, that it doesn't just have to be for business owners. It can be for people that want to own businesses or thinking about it, because we're gonna be there to support you either way through all of it.
Everyone looks like a good train wreck.
Yeah. That's not a bad point. So we know like the mental toll, and there's so much statistics out there on like comparing yourself to what you see on social media. And I love when they, thinking back to Hope's interview and talking about, influencers in the wild and stuff like that. And people are getting so much better about that. But it does take such a huge impact on you personally, especially when you see business owners doing well. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I have a list here.
Oh, there's more? You're surprising me with more? Oh, shit. Okay.
Let's just talk about why that highlight reel can feel discouraging to new business owners.
All right. Shoot.
Number one, do you think that social media is helpful or harmful for entrepreneurs? And both can be an answer.
Well, right. So like it's where people are. So when you're advertising, you have to find out how to get to people where they are. Like personally, I don't want to be on social media. I want to quit it. I want to delete all the apps. But I'm the one that runs the social media accounts, because my husband cannot. He cannot handle keeping up on things. He cannot handle complaints. He cannot handle and I have to keep up on like, you have to watch other people's stuff, and you have to engage, and you want to be supportive, and you have to do all of the things. So you have to be on social, and you have to understand, not that I'm great at it, but you have to have an understanding of like how it works. Trying to get people to understand how to the new thing you do on Instagram.
Collaborate.
Thank you. And I'm like, no, Aaron, you have to get him to collab. You have to go on Instagram. He's like, well, I made a Facebook event, and and it's like, you have to understand the things. You have to know the things. And in order to do that, you have to be a part of the things. Right. So it's like a necessary evil right now. I think if you could avoid it and your business doesn't need it, there are plenty of places that don't have a social media presence and do fine. I think that the social toll of social media in general is a huge negative, but it's a hard thing to like be like, oh no, just get off social media, because we have to. So like my whole goal in life is to spend as little I get sucked in. So I go on the business accounts, and then I get sucked in. And then I'm like, okay, get off. Like, get off. Yeah. Do your business and get off.
Right. I think too, like business, it's true. And the reason why I wanted to start with that, because I know how you feel about social media. I know how you feel about social media for your children. But also knowing that you are on social media, probably if you're on social media 3 hours a day, that is 3 hours more than you wish to be on there.
3 minutes is 3 minutes more than I wish to be on there. But for people who are listening that don't know, my kids aren't allowed on it. My 14-year-old got paid her allowance to not have social media because I saw the negative impact of her mental health when she first got her phone. She hates when I talk about her, but I'm sharing this as a parent, not about her per se. I did notice immediately the change when she went off it. She still has access to Pinterest, so she still gets access to a lot of stuff because everything's like cross-posted, but the algorithm is just different. So I did see an immediate change in her mental health, and I should not have started at $20 a week, but I was desperate and I needed her to feel better, and I knew it would work. And she was like, I don't need the $20 a week anymore. And I was like, well, you're still not allowed on it, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think too with business, like just business side, because I do not have children, and I'm sure I would not let them on social media either. It's interesting because I do sometimes, like, that's where some businesses live in selling on through social media. But also, we're always looking to see what other people are doing. And sometimes I go through, and the negative part for me is, oh, you're doing that. I want to do that. That totally makes sense for my business. Oh, you're doing that's in my brand. I could totally do that. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I can't accomplish anything because I've now filled my head with all of these ideas that other people are doing, which you don't even know if they're working or not. Like, let's be honest. Like, You can do an event. I can do that event. Like, that event looks amazing. I should be doing more events. And then it just turns into this downward spiral where I'm not getting anything done because I've now looked at what other people are doing. So I've tried to kind of stop with that. I get on to do the social media that I have to and let the people in my businesses who are helping on some level with social media kind of look at that other stuff. What are other people in the area doing and what's doing well? Because I can't, because I just go into a spiral. But I think you and I are pretty open about who we are. And I think since the pandemic, we've been able to even be more open, I think for different reasons, not necessarily going right out and saying our political or social views and values, but I would be surprised if anybody walked into either of our businesses and did not know that if they knew of us at all. Just stumbling upon us one thing, but knowing us is kind of knowing our businesses. And I think it's interesting, and I'm curious what you think, because I'm now starting to see, Taylor Swift just did it. I know a couple businesses in Rochester just put up posts yesterday of their lawn signs of who they're voting for president. And I think back to when we kind of had to be open and honest about how we were handling reopening after the pandemic. And I'm curious to see, have you seen this happening? Like, what do you think the benefits are of really putting your political views out there when it's so contentious and so close to an election? And this is the time where a lot of us in the restaurant industry are making our money. If we don't have a beautiful big outdoor patio, fall is when we are banking money for a cold, dreary winter. So I'm curious.
And every time they say it might snow. Because now that it doesn't snow anymore, everyone's scared of like the slightest. It's like we live in Maryland. I'm like, things did not shut down. Anyways.
Right. Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think is that something that you will get involved in, or?
I have the same sign out in front of my restaurant that essentially in less offensive words says, don't be a fucking dick. Mm-hmm. I don't care what your political views are. When you're a guest in my establishment, I also don't care when you're my employee. There are certain things in my life that I keep certain people at arm's length because of their political views, because I don't feel like that's a safe place for my family for completely separate reasons. But I have the base. I want to be a politician because I hate politics so much.
Love that.
I talk about running all the time with Aaron. I just don't want to do the running. Like, I just want to do the work. I think that nobody takes into account the right things. And if no one's going to take into account the right things that actually affect us on the micro level, then I might as well vote for somebody that cultural difference is going to make a shift. Ironically, I think that people who vote opposite me would be voting for that same reason, because they think that culturally that's the shift they want to see. I don't think that anybody can, in good faith, really think that a presidential nominee or a presidential candidate is going to change things on a micro level, on a household level, on a business level. Like small businesses, it's 500 employees or less. Like we learned that during the pandemic. Like we call ourselves small business, but we're not. We are so micro, right? So like, I don't know. It's disconcerting. I have lots of political views. They align and disalign with different parties. And I was actually just thinking about this like yesterday or the day before. I don't like I actually on this car, I don't have it, but I usually take the license plate holder off of my car after I buy it. I don't wear logos that aren't mine. Like I won't put a lawn sign up for anybody. It doesn't matter who I'm voting for. Like I've done it. I did it for a friend of mine once. And that's only because he was a friend and he asked. And I was like, listen, like this is a big deal. I don't put lawn signs up, right? Like I feel uncomfortable that there is a Selena's magnet on the back of my car. Like I just don't, that's just not my thing because I don't think it matters. I don't think it makes a difference. And then it's just distracting from what's really going on, which is doing the work. That was a long-winded circular answer.
It's okay. I like it.
So yeah, when it comes to my business, I have the exact same sign up from COVID. It's still at my front door and it says that we value everyone as a human. And if you can't be respectful to everyone else, you're not welcome.
Perfect. All right. Well, we will be creating that. It'll be available on the Bossy website, Bossy Rock, BOSS.
Don't be a dick 2024. Can that be our...
Vote Kelly. That's for us. All right, let's talk a second about the boundary, that balance between authenticity and oversharing. I feel like we talk about our businesses honestly on social media. And I mean more the personal side now, because we talk about it in our Bossy group all the time. But I think we've never been shy about where we are financially or how this industry has just
decimated our souls.
Decimated, I'm going to find the right word for the hospitality industry.
Sorry, it's still post-pandemic. Maybe 2025, I won't say decimated our souls.
And I feel like there was a time where people really wanted to hear it. I remember I did a post about I think it was like the year anniversary, and it got like, I don't know, 287 shares or something. And I was like, am I viral? Did I go viral? Because I didn't know. And that's not viral, by the way. And then I remember posting it at the anniversary, and I certainly didn't expect anything. And I think I had like 40 likes. And I was like, are people done hearing about this now? Because I feel like you still need to know that small businesses are struggling. But I feel like sometimes there's benefits to still sharing and being honest. Have you had any instances or situations where that's kind of backfired, or where, I mean, I've had that from family members where it's kind of that, like, stop talking about this. Nobody needs to hear this anymore. But if you had any things that you shared that you're like, well, maybe that wasn't the best thing to share.
Well, there's a couple of things. One is people make assumptions. So they're like, oh, you got funding, you got help, you're fine. Right. It's over. I've done interviews and people are like, oh, so how are you faring in like the post-pandemic, now that the pandemic's over? And I'm like, like prices are still skyrocketing. The top is still getting all the money and the rest of us are still making the same amount and not getting government funding anymore. So it doesn't really mathematically make sense. So I've had to like educate people on the economy and like this fake recession that we're in, and my own personal views of like how and why that happened and how it needs to be addressed. If anybody wants to hear my speech for running for president, I will share it on a different episode. So yeah, I think there's that. But then there's like this whole assumption that people, so like lots of people think I'm loaded. I have a big old house, bought my house for $100,000. I spent years fixing that shit up. You know, like, yeah, I have a big old house. It's a pain in the ass, and I have all the blood, sweat, and tears to make it worth every penny it's worth now. Like, you know what I mean? I bought a building. Do you think I paid cash for that shit? No, I didn't pay cash for that shit. I rolled my retirement into the down payment and took out a crap ton of loans because I'm willing to take, you know what I mean? Because you're willing to take the risk. I think so that people are just like, oh, and Selena's has been open 25 years, so it must be doing amazing. And it's like, no, we had a really tough summer. People are really strapped for cash and they're being very specific on where they're spending it. And so we saw a definite decline and we still had to staff it, right? So it's like people's assumption on how life works versus how life really works, and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to know anymore. They're stressed out themselves. I get it. Like everything that we're stressed out about is hitting the household level, and they just want to go out and ignore it. So I don't share about my kids, but that's for personal reasons. I don't share about my business anymore because people just don't want to hear it. They only want to hear the good stuff. So I just share the events we're doing and the fun things going on and like, hey, forget about life for a while, because that's what they want to hear. We're all stressed the fuck out.
It's okay to talk about that. It's okay to talk about being stressed out, but that's a good point. Like sharing the fun stuff and the things that can put a smile on somebody's face is probably more important right now than reality check.
Well, and they know they can come here for the reality check.
Yeah, exactly. Because we'll be real. So back to business ownership and sharing things and being honest. So if there is a new business owner out there and they're like, I need to get myself out there, any advice about how to go about setting up your social media and what to share? Are there any, like you've talked about, these are things you'll share, these are things you won't share, but any advice about putting too much of yourself out there and being as open and as honest as we are?
Well, I mean, I'm not a social media guru, but I think that people, especially shopping local, want to know you. They want to know about you. Depending on where you are, I feel like I have one business that's way more into it than the other one, where I know people really want to hear from us personally. They would probably love to see pictures of my kids, but I just can't do it. So it's like, okay, you really need to know where you are and who your audience is. But anybody that doesn't do like a lead up, like I think that's crazy. Like if you know you're starting a business, like do a documentary, like have a feed of like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm working on. These are the things that have changed. If you have a brick and mortar, like what it looked like before. Oh, I painted this well, like people love that lead up, and then it gets invested into wanting to support you once you're open. And just making those connections. It's all about networking and connections. So if you don't have a good following of people that want to know what you're doing, and how you do that is you go and you join every association you can go to, you meet everyone, you follow them, they follow you, and then get them to support you and be excited about your business. And then you're going to have a much stronger jump in. And that's a personal opinion. But if you want to pay me for it, you can reach out to me anytime. I actually was just talking to a friend of ours at the hot wing competition as we were leaving, and he's starting a business. Truth be told, he is only starting a business to get on our podcast. Let's be real.
Be true, I'm sure.
He said, I want to be on your podcast. I said, you're not a business owner. And he said, fine. And then he was like, I'm opening a business. So I take that to mean he is only doing it to get on our podcast.
I don't know what else it could possibly mean.
No, I mean, obviously he didn't want to just start a business. So he was like, oh my God, like this is so stressful. He's like, every time I make a giant movement forward, I get punched down and like brought back so many steps. And your husband walked by. And I was like, Don, we were just talking about how wonderful it feels that every time you make an amazing movement forward, you get punched down. And he's like, yeah, it's fucking great. It's the best.
And he means that sarcastically and honestly too, because he does thrive in those moments.
Right. But it's like those moments that I think if you're in the kind of industry and the kind of business that is a personal, interpersonal connection, sharing that stuff would make people really interested in what you're doing.
I agree. And that's why we try to share the stories that we share and the people that we share and the personal stories that we have. And I think it's also, I agree with all that, but super important, like you said, to know, like throw it all out there to begin with for sure, but know where you are and what your audience is and what they want. My audience for Marshall Street, completely different than my audience for the Union Tavern.
They want to know when your 25-cent wings are.
Yeah, they want to know, show me pretty pictures of food and what's going on and can I watch the Bill game? Yeah, not to say that they don't like us or our staff. I mean, if I did post about our staff, if I had the time to figure out how to figure out time to do all that, those would likely do well. But Union is they want to know what I had for breakfast, where's my dog. They just want to know you. They want to know everything they can, and that is super important. So I don't always necessarily have to do it on social media, but it's in person all the time. But I think it also kind of comes down. So I think these things go hand in hand, like how you run your business and how you're showing it on social media, because we have to be so transparency is super important. And a lot of people have come to expect that from us, and for you too, I'm sure.
Yes.
So super important. Be transparent and honest. I think it will work. There are certainly some times when it hasn't. And I think I've seen very few businesses go down because of them being transparent and honest. And sometimes you lose people, but sometimes that makes way for more of the people that you want. We've done things where I know we've lost customers for our Bossy. I mean, we've done things in Bossy that we know we've lost members for, but we're sticking true to what we believe. And I think if you do that with your business, as long as you feel comfortable and can sleep at the end of the day, then you've probably done the right thing. And your business closes because of who you choose to support as a political candidate, then that's just not going to happen.
Right.
You want to put it out there, but make sure it's something that you can back up and you can have conversations about it.
But I think there's certain people that's really important to them, and that's one of their values. My political views aren't one of my values. I just run by my mission and value statement, and that is it. And I don't need to. Some people, I feel like they need to prove that that's really who they are, so they're putting that out there to be like, "Hey, look." Whereas mine are not necessarily party aligned; they're people aligned, and so I don't feel the connection to do that. But plenty of people do. And they're like, you know what? If you're voting that person, I don't want you to come here. And that's your business choice.
Right.
That is a decision that only one person or maybe a couple of people get to make.
Right. Excellent. Well, thanks for being in the hot seat today.
Did I pass? Oh my God.
You passed. You did a really good job. You win. You still win. No, I think it's just important. And for people that are listening, if you're talking to business owners or you hear this come up, please tell them to listen, and certainly listen to this episode, but listen to the stories of the people that we interview, because every person that we interview, we ask the same questions before we get started. Is there anything that you want to talk about? Is there anything that you don't want to talk about? But we are here to tell the real story. We don't need fluff. People aren't coming to us for those stories. There are wonderful podcasts out there that are sharing all of the wonderful things about business ownership. That is not us. We are very much like MTV's The Real World. If MTV would like to sponsor us, they can reach out to us at BossyRock, that's ROC@gmail.com. We will happily take your sponsorship, because I'm sure what we're doing right now is going to, people are going to start watching old Real World.
We're going viral.
We're going viral, I'm sure.
Oh my God. When you learn editing, can you do it like the video for The Real World?
And
scratchy, that's black and white, and the pot. I just had this memory in my head.
Yeah. Oh no, I could play it. Yeah, it's right here on the other. And that's why when I first was talking, this is the second take for those of you. Maybe Jazzy will leave it in. Who knows? But this is the second take because I opened with saying I'm looking forward to learning about video editing, because I wanted to do that. Because I'm like, when you see this live, or no, when you see this on video, that's how it's going to be. That's going to be you and me. Thing. So I'll figure it out. Honestly, from the podcast movement, I did meet with so many different companies that video editing just from year to year. So Kelly and I just got back from, as I'm sure you know, because you follow us on our socials, we just got back from the podcast movement in Washington, D.C. Last year we went in Denver and it was wonderful, and I felt like I was looking for those companies that really simplified video editing and utilizing AI in regards to picking out parts and little video clips and stuff like that. And there were a few, but they were super expensive, and they were all with by a subscription, you're buying tokens.
Oh yeah.
Where this year they're $10 a month. And you can do, or free, here's our free version to do video editing. So I'm super excited. And that means all of you listening will get to see our beautiful faces very soon. And I'm going to have to do something about my studio. I'm going to fix my studio again downstairs, because being in my home office is not as pretty, I'll be honest. So,
well, I would like to end this episode, since I was in the hot seat, thanking you for playing along with the Hot Wing, Last Wing Standing for part of the Rochester Fringe Fest at Selena's today. You made it more than halfway.
I did. I was excited, and I feel a little bit better now. I know. And John, so they ate 8 wings. I made it to the 5th one, and I might have been able to go further, but 2 things happened. One, like, I know that moment where my reaction to like super hot stuff, because Don does these things all the time, and I'm like, this is the hottest chip in the world. This is the hottest gummy bear in the world. And I'll do it, and I'll eat a little bit of it. I go to hiccup. So I know when I get close to the hiccuping, that's when it's bad. And then I also know if it gets really bad with the hiccups, what is in my stomach no longer likes to be there.
Correct.
And there's a limit on what I will vomit.
Yeah.
And anything hotter than that, I was like, I'm not doing.
I assume it's hotter coming back up. But on that note.
And then, yeah, right? And then Don was like, do it. I was like, how are you recording? I would like to be able to feel my lips and be able to not be sweating because we are on video. I'm going to try and like not get myself into the most disgusting mess possible before we record our episode. So, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Well, on that note, I'll have to prep to put Kelly on the hot seat, get you back.
Yeah.
But
excellent.
Thank you for listening. Follow us at Bossy Rock, BOSSYROC. Email us your ideas at bossyrock@gmail.com. Our website, bossyrock.com. You can catch all of our podcast episodes and information about us.
Mm-hmm. And stay tuned for our next episode. We are going to be interviewing a woman who has run her business her entire life, and I'm super excited because her story is very unique, and you're going to hear about one of the very coolest places in Rochester, and I'm super excited for that. So
I'm so
stay
excited.
tuned.
I can't wait to hear her story. All right. Be bold.
Be brave.
And be the boss.